Alex.
Hello. So I have a question. I got into the Zoom to learn a little bit, listening mute. I'm a fairly new with the business side, no, of dealing.
Okay.
I have a client that is telling me that another agent, a residential agent, he's telling me that he might have another business person, a small business person. He's a landscape business. I saw their numbers and everything. The owner wants to sell for 550, but the business by itself the number doesn't reach. I mean, it's not enough to get to that level, no?
Yeah.
And what happened is that because it's a landscape business, I can see the roots and the contrast, but he cannot declare the employees because they are, they don't have the papers.
Yeah.
And most of them jobs gets paid by he gets paid a lot by cash.
Yeah.
So basically the business doesn't declare that, and on the taxes that I asked for it, the number doesn't reach the numbers that he wants.
Right.
I don't know how to deal with that. And
so what I can tell you is if he doesn't declare it, first of all, he's telling you there's cash, which is fine. There is, we know that, but he's also spending that cash to pay the employees. So it's kind of a net zero proposition. If he didn't declare it on his tax returns, you can't really add it in and say that it exists. And furthermore, if he's paying it out to the employees, then it doesn't really exist anyways, right? Because it's just being expensed out. So you have no way of being able to prove to a buyer what the actual income of the business is or what the actual profitability of the business is. And so in terms of trying to sell it, my personal approach is always to tell the seller what I can sell the business for based on the documentation that's been provided to me, because I have to be able to substantiate an asking price.
Right.
And if I can't substantiate it, and then I can't try and convince a buyer to pay it without essentially perpetrating fraud, which I'm not willing to do. So with the seller, it really comes down to educating them and just saying, look at, this is what I think I can sell your business for. I understand you want more, but your paperwork, your documentation doesn't support more. So this is what I can do. If that's something that works, then we can move forward. If not, you're better off, honestly, to walk away, because otherwise you're going to probably wind up in a courtroom.
Okay.
And nobody needs to wind up in a courtroom.
Yeah, that's not good.
No.
I wanna, my idea is to see how a problem like that will be, if it can be solved on this case for this type of companies. Because there are many companies that they go on cash, cash transactions.
Yes.
And small companies, no? Small business companies.
Yeah, but those are the ones, the smaller the company, the higher the liability to you as a broker. The smaller the company, the higher the probability that ultimately it's going to end up in court, end up with a buyer selling or suing the seller for fraud or for misrepresentation or for something. So that's why, it's much easier, honestly, to sell a business that's doing $3 million in revenue than it is to sell a business that's doing 300,000, because the business doing 3 million in revenue usually have books and records that are reasonable. They know what a profit and loss statement is and can provide it to you. They may have a lot of cash too, But nonetheless, they understand when you explain to them and say, hey, it's not on the books. You didn't declare it on your tax returns. You already derived the benefit of it. So you don't get to double dip. You know, that's kind of what I tell them. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I was assuming that.
Yeah,
But
there's no easy answer to the cash-based businesses where they're skimming cash and not declaring things, because really, you know, then you don't even know what you're selling. How can you represent a business where you don't even know what it is you're selling?
yeah, his idea is to show me the contracts that he has with his clients.
Yeah.
He has a contract for, I mean, to me, I wouldn't do the business, but
Yeah.
no.
But the contracts that he has with the clients, maybe they're contracts, maybe they're not. I can tell you right now on the because I'm also an attorney, so on the legal side of the house right now, I'm dealing with a buyer. I have a buyer who's one of my clients, where basically he did that very thing. He bought a landscape architecture company from a guy who showed him a bunch of paperwork, who told him there were a lot of contracts, who ultimately, well, let's just say that things were not as represented. And not only that, but this particular seller apparently has done the same thing, and so, you know, does the same thing, sells, gets a bunch of contracts or whatever, but sells a business like every 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Overinflates it and then sells to somebody else and sells to, you know, and so it's just, when you have that issue, in this case, he also had the buyer sign promissory notes outside of the purchase agreement, because the business didn't support, you know, the cash flow, supposed cash flow didn't support the asking price. So the asking price was reduced. But the seller wanted more money, so he had the buyer sign promissory notes outside of escrow, so he wouldn't have to pay the broker on them. So there's all these kinds of red flags that say this is, you know,
Not
if a
good.
guy's trying to cheat the government and cheat the broker and, you know, cheat everybody else, why would any buyer think that that seller was not going to try and cheat them as well? You know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, you
Makes
just,
sense.
you got to be careful with things like that so you don't get caught up in it.
Yeah. Okay.